This is the Buffett Mindset channel where we practice patience and calm wealth building daily. If you enjoy these types of videos, consider liking and subscribing. This will mean a lot to the channel.
When that first truth sinks deep, that no one is coming to save you, it stings a cold iron against bare skin. You realize just how much of your life you've spent waiting for someone to see your effort, waiting for timing to align, waiting for a rake, a helping hand, a little bit of luck. But waiting is a slow poison that tastes like hope. It keeps you passive while convincing you that you're preparing. It keeps you trapped in Sunday while life burns today. The truth is that every man alive has been given the same raw materials: breath, mind, choice. Some carve kingdoms with them, others waste them wishing for rescue. The great divide between the powerful and the powerless is not talent, it's responsibility. One group carries it willingly, the other avoids it like plague. The man who carries it, who shoulders his own weight even when it breaks his back, that man becomes unstoppable. Because pain purifies, pressure forges, responsibility transforms. Now we come to the second truth. Your feelings don't care about your future. Every man learns this lesson either early through wisdom or late through loss. Feelings are weather.
They come, they go, and if you build your house on them, you'll drown with the tide. The world worships emotion, chasing comfort, chasing excitement, chasing validation. But emotion was never meant to lead, it was meant to serve. A man led by feelings becomes a slave to circumstance. A man led by vision turns feelings into fuel. There will be mornings where you wake up heavy, tired, uninspired. That not a signal to stop, that a signal to lead. The mission doesn't care about your mood. The goal doesn't pause because you're bored. Discipline means you show up when every fiber of your being wants to quit. You show up as you said you would. You show up as you made a promise to the man in the mirror, and breaking it is the first death of integrity. The mention of men who rise to power, they don't feel like it every day. They act like it until the feeling follows. Truth 3, time is your most ruthless creditor. You can borrow everything else, money, advice, support, tools, but time gives no extensions, accepts no excuses, and charges full interest on waste. Every hour you trade for distraction, you aid in destiny. Look around you. Most men are bankrupt of time, but rich in regret. They spend years gambling with their purpose. The clock will show mercy, but it never does. Time is indifferent to potential. It only rewards execution. You don't need more hours, you need more clarity. The richest men on earth didn't invent more time. They mastered direction. 10 minutes of fate's action can outweigh 10 hours of scattered effort. The clock is not your enemy. Confusion is. Every tick is invitation, and every hesitation is a withdrawal. One day you'll wish you started sooner. Don't bait that day your epitaph. Make it your awakening. The fourth truth, your environment is stronger than your will. Every man believes he can resist influence until he can't. You think you can walk through mediocrity and not smell like it? You think you can drink from poisoned wells and stay pure? The people around you are shaping your mind even when they say nothing. Their energy becomes your atmosphere. Their standards become your ceiling. Their beliefs become your blueprint. That's why every man who rises must endure the pain of separation.
You cannot build empires surrounded by echoes of small thinking.
You cannot evolve if you're surrounded by those allergic to growth. And the harshest part, some of those people will be family. Some will be friends. But loyalty to stagnation is treason against your future. When you cut ties with limitation, you don't become cruel, you become free.
Truth 5. Discipline is worth more than motivation. Motivation is loud and fleeting. Discipline is silent and eternal. Motivation is the firework, discipline is the forge. You can be motivated by a speech, a song, or a sunrise, but if you depend on it, you'll never last. Motivation fades at the first sign of fatigue. Discipline endures through storms, through doubt, through loneliness. It's what gets you up when no one clapping, what drives you when no one watching. Every great man in history, from generals to inventors, from prophets to builders, had one thing in common. They acted on schedule, not emotion. They moved by law, not by mood. And every time you choose discipline over comfort, you rewrite the programming of your mind. You prove to yourself that you are the master, not the passenger. The day you stop negotiating with your excuse is the day your real life begins. The sixth truth. Nobody cares about your excuses. The world does not reward effort, it rewards results. You can cry, justify, explain, But in the end, the scoreboard doesn't lie. You either did or you didn't. You either produced or you postponed. The marketplace doesn't care about your reasons. It compensates your outcomes. That might sound cruel, but it's liberating. Because if no one coming to save you, then no one coming to stop you either. You are free to build, to rise, to outwork, to outthink, to outlast. The same indifference that ignores your excuses will amplify your excellence. The world may not owe you anything, but it always respond to mastery. That mastery begins when you stop telling stories and start writing results. Truth 7. You will outgrow more people than you lose. And that not arrogance, that evolution, growth is the quiet death of compatibility. As your vision expands, your circle tight to 8. The man who once understood you may now call you distant. The woman who once inspired you may now irritate you. It not betrayal, a biology of purpose. Every level of 5 has its own language, its own rhythm, its own laws. You can't speak ambition in the dialect of comfort. You can't speak focus in the vocabulary of distraction. And when you rise, expect resistance. You're not being punished, you're being purified. The noise of others will fade when the volume of your mission increases. Truth 8, success is rented, and rent is due daily. There is no arrival, no permanent state of greatness. Every day you must earn the right to stay sharp. Every day you must renew your contract with excellence. The moment you start believing you've made it, decay begins. Success is not a trophy, it's maintenance. The same habits that built your fortune are the ones that sustain it. The second you stop reading, reflecting, refining, you begin to rot. Buffett still studies, still learns, still listens. Not because he needs more wealth, but because he understands that stagnation is invisible decay. The price of mastery is eternal motion. Rest when you're done, not when you're tired. Truth 9, fear never leaves you, just outgrow its influence. Every man dreams of being fearless, but that of fantasy, fear is built into the fabric of human instinct. The goal is not to eliminate it, but to domesticate it, to teach it, to serve you. Fear of loss becomes vigilance. Fear of failure becomes preparation. Fear of mediocrity becomes fuel. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's the refusal to obey it. The men who appear fearless aren't void of, they've simply learned to command it. They stand in the same storms you do, but they've learned to sail instead of sink. And finally, truth 10, your life is a mirror, not a mystery. The results you see are the reflections of the standards you've accepted. If your world is chaotic, it is your mind is. If your relationships are weak, it is your boundaries are. If your finances are unstable, it is your focus is scattered. Nothing in life happens to you, it happens through you. The man who takes this truth to heart becomes unstoppable, but he no longer blames or begs, he builds. He looks at the reflection, adjusts the cause, and rewrites the effect. That power, that manhood, that mastery. So tonight, when the fire burns low and the world grows quiet, repeat this to yourself like law. No one is coming to save thee. My feelings are not my leaders. Time is my currency. My circle is my climate. Discipline is my power. Excuses are the poison. Growth demands solitude. Success is maintenance. Fear is my servant. Life is my mirror. 10 truths, 10 laws, 10 keys that separate men who drift from men who command. If you obey them, they re-rake you first, but then they rebuild you into something the world cannot ignore. They're a quiet that comes after truth, an eerie, unshaken quiet. It not peace, not yet. It the silence that follows demolition when the lies have been torn down and only the foundation remains. Most men never reach that quiet because they never let truth finish its work. They hear the first sting of it and flinch, rushing back to the noise of comfort. But the few who stay, who sit inside that silence and let the weight of it press against their chest, those are the ones who rise. That silence is sacred. It's where the rebuild begins. Because truth doesn't comfort, it cleanses, it strips you bare so you can finally see what left of you when every excuse, illusion, and borrowed belief has been burned away. And what left, if you look closely enough, is strength. Not the loud kind, not the boastful kind, but the quiet kind. The kind that doesn't need to prove itself, because it knows it still be standing when the noise fades. This is where the real work begins. Not in the chase for motivation, not in the endless search for the next big thing, but in the daily rebuilding of your character upon those 10 truths. each one becomes a stone, heavy but holy. You lay them one by one until you've built a fortress no storm can touch. That the paradox of manhood. The more truth you can carry, the freer you become. The weaker the foundation, the louder the walls must be to compensate. That's why so may shout they're afraid their silence would expose their cracks. You, however, begin to value that silence. You begin to see that greatness grows best in solitude. Not isolation, but solitude. The sacred space where you can hear your own voice again, unfiltered, uncorrupted by the static of others. When you begin to live by these truths, something strange happens. The world starts to react differently to you. People sense something has changed, but they can't quite explain it. You haven't become cruel or cold, but your energy is different, solid, unmoving, like a mountain. You no longer explain yourself. You no longer chase validation. You walk into rooms with quiet eyes that see everything but reveal nothing. That's what truth does. It gives you gravity. The kind of presence that doesn't beg to be made ahas. It demands to be respected. The man who has faced his truths no longer needs to convince anyone of anything. His very existence is evidence. And though the world will tempt you to soften, to forget, to compromise, to make peace with mediocrity, you will know better. Because once you have seen the cost of ignorance, you never again pay it willingly. You'll start to see through things that used to fool you, the illusion of busy, the empty pride of constant noise, the cheap dopamine of shallow approval. You'll trade all that for quiet mastery. You'll start moving slower but hitting harder, speaking less but meaning more. You'll start saying no, not out of arrogance but alignment. Every no will become an investment in your focus. Every yes will become a covenant with purpose. And in time, your life will become sharper edges clean, priorities pure, motion deliberate. But don't mistake this refinement for comfort. Growth never feels graceful while you're in it. Truth will keep demanding new levels from you, new sacrifices, new confrontation. It'll ask you to shed more of what's false. Every time you rise, you'll lose versions of yourself you once loved. You'll bury habits that used to feel like home. You'll feel lonely at times, misunderstood, even mocked. That's the toll of evolution. But understand this, every man who had transcended mediocrity walked this same road. Buffett, Carnegie, Lincoln, Rockefeller, they weren't loved for their clarity, they were feared for it. The world despises mirrors that expose its laziness. The moment you stop playing along, you become the enemy of comfort. And that when you know you're on the right path, because truth doesn't make you what, it makes you powerful. Power doesn't come from applause, it comes from awareness. You become unshakable not when the world agrees with you, but when its disapproval no longer defines you. You begin to see that external validation is just noise from men who haven't faced themselves yet. And so you stop explaining your fire to those content with smoke. You stop watering yourself down for the palates of the unthirsty. You stop apologizing for your intensity. Greatness is intense. Precision is intense. Discipline is intense. Only those who have surrendered to ease find intensity offensive. You'll notice your standards rising quietly. The way you dress, the way you think, the way you spend your hours. You'll start pruning everything that doesn't align with the man you're becoming. Not out of perfectionism, but out of reverence for your potential. You'll start guarding your mornings like sacred territory. You'll end your nights with reflection instead of distraction. You'll stop chasing motivation and start cultivating momentum. And you'll start understanding something that separates the one thing from everyone else. Mastery isn't built in bursts, it's carved in repetition. It's the same deliberate action, done correctly, over and over, long after emotion has faded. This is the life of a man reborn through truth. He stops being reactive and starts being rhythmic. Every choice has intention. Every action aligns with his vision. He lives by design, not default. And while others chase excitement, he chases execution. Because excitement fades, execution compounds. And through this compound dawns the one mentalist secretly crave but few would attain peace. Not comfort, not laziness. Peace, the kind that comes when your actions are finally in harmony with your words. When your private habits match your public image. When your mind, body, and spirit are no longer at war. That the prize that truth offers And by then, you'll realize something profound. The truths you once feared have become your freedom. The pain that once broke you has become your teacher. The solitude that once felt that punishment has become your sanctuary. You no longer dread the struggle, you respect it. Because the struggle is proof that you're no longer asleep. You have woken up to the laws of life, and now you live among them like a craftsman, not a victim. Each day is a chance to practice mastery. Each decision is a chance to affirm your standards. Each failure is a mirror, not a verdict. So if there's one lesson to etch into your soul tonight, let it be this: truth doesn't just set you free, it forges you. Freedom isn't the absence of pain, it's the authority over it. The man who faces his truth commands his destiny. The man who hides from it remains a stranger to himself. The difference between those two men determines the entire course of their lives. One dies waiting for change, the other becomes it, say. They're the rare kind of peace that arrives when you've looked at every part of yourself and stopped flinching. Most men never reach it. They build their whole lives around avoiding mirrors, avoiding silence, avoiding truth. They surround themselves with distractions, noise, screens, comfort, other people's opinions, because facing themselves feels like stepping into cold water. But those who do it, those who finally take the plunge, discover something astonishing on the other side. It's stillness, not emptiness, but power at rest. The man who has faced himself no longer fears the world because he understands it just an extension of him. He no longer needs to dominate others because he has conquered the one battlefield that actually matters, the one inside his own mind. This is the beginning of sovereignty. It was Buffett, Carnegie, and every man of mastery eventually found peace not from retreat, but from rule over self. Because once you learn to govern your own thoughts, your own emotions, your own reactions, you no longer need to control anything outside you. You move from desperation to dejection. You no longer chase outcomes, you shape them. You no longer crave approval, you project certainty. That when the world begins to bend quietly in your favor, people start listening differently when you speak. Opportunities seem to find you instead of you chasing them. But it's not luck, it's alignment. You've become a man who broadcasts order into a chaotic world, and everything that resonates with that order starts orbiting you. The world will tell you that to succeed you need charisma, timing, luck. But that half-truth at best. What you really need is internal gravity. When your energy becomes stable, when your emotions are no longer wild horses dragging you from one reaction to another, you become magnetic. People sense it. They can't always explain it, but they feel safer around a man who is calm, deliberate, unshaken. It's why Buffett can speak softly yet command billion-dollar rooms. It's not volume that moves people, it's certainty. It's not speed, it's steadiness. When you reach that level, you stop being tossed around by circumstance, you become the circumstance. But heal, the paradox, power like this comes with a new burden, restraint. You'll realize you have the ability to influence, to move, to persuade. But the mature man doesn't abuse it. He uses it with surgical precision. He doesn't try to prove dominance. He directs it there. If it matters when you begin to live this way, your presence changes from noise to silence, from chaos to command. Your words become rare, your movements economical. You don't waste time explaining what you know because truth once lived doesn't need might. It shows itself in the rhythm of your existence. People begin to trust you, not because of your talk, but because your life moves like law. Yet even in mastery, there are tests. Every time you rise higher, life will test your integrity. It will tempt you with shortcuts, with applause, with comfort disguised as reward. It'll whisper that you've earned the right to coast. But the truth is, no man coasts uphill. The moment you stop climbing, gravity reclaims you. So the question is never, when will I arrive, but how long can I remain in motion? True greatness is not about reaching a peak, it's about maintaining altitude. It's about holding yourself to the same standard in victory that you did in struggle. Most men can handle the climb. Few can handle the view. Because the higher you rise, the quieter it gets. You'll lose more voices than you gain. The crowds will thin out. Praise will fade. It'll be you, the silence, and your standard. That's where real faith is forged. Not in noise, but in the loneliness of command. It's why so few reach mastery. They can't stand the solitude that comes with it. But if you can embrace it, if you can learn to find comfort in that quiet, you'll begin to hear something else beneath it. Guidance, the whisper of your own intuition, the rhythm of universal law, the subtle pull of purpose. It doesn't shout it orange. So the man who can hear that whisper will always move faster and truer than the man screaming for motivation. From that point on, you'll stop chasing how and start living from why. You'll understand that other tactics in the world mean nothing without foundation, and the foundation is truth. These 10 truths were never meant to inspire you. They were meant to restructure you, to tear down the weak framework of wishful thinking and rebuild it with steel beams of reality.
Everything you can do, note it.
Welcome. Because the higher you rise, the quieter it gets. You'll lose more voices than you gain. The crowds will thin out. Praise will fade. It'll be you, the silence, and your standard. That's where real faith is forged. Not in noise, but in the loneliness of command. It's why so few reach mastery. They can't stand the solitude that comes with it. But if you can embrace it, if you can learn to find comfort in that quiet, you'll begin to hear something else beneath it. Guidance, the whisper of your own intuition, the rhythm of universal law, the subtle pull of purpose. It doesn't shout it orange. So the man who can hear that whisper will always move faster and truer than the man screaming for motivation. From that point on, you'll stop chasing how and start living from why. You'll understand that other tactics in the world mean nothing without foundation, and the foundation is truth. These 10 truths were never meant to inspire you. They were meant to restructure you, to tear down the weak framework of wishful thinking and rebuild it with steel beams of reality. Because when truth becomes your structure, you stop collapsing under pressure. You can take loss, betrayal, fatigue, and still move. The world may push, but it can't penetrate. Your identity no longer bends with circumstances. You don't react, you recalibrate. And need a secret only the masters know. Pain never leaves it, it evolves. But when you've built yourself on truth, pain stops being punishment. It becomes propulsion. Every setback comes a signal, every rejection a redirection, every loss a lesson. You start life differently. You stop asking, why me? And start asking, what is this? Teaching me that shift alone will double your strength. Because now you're not resisting life, you're collaborating with it. The waves don't drown you anymore, they drive you. This is when gratitude returns, not the polite kind, but the fierce kind. You start to thank the very storms that once broke you, because now you see what they built. You didn't lose anything vital, only what was weak. You begin to respect struggle like a craftsman respects fire, the own force that can temper raw metal into a blade. That the essence of these truths, they don't spare you, they sharpen you. They don't hand you comfort, they hand you command. And if you've come this far, if you've absorbed this message without turning away, then you are already among the rare. Because only a handful of men have the courage to stand naked before truth and let it rebuild them. So when you lie down tonight, remember this: every truth you face becomes a brick in the fortress of the man you're becoming. Every lie you ignore becomes a crack that will one day collapse your foundation. Live carefully, think deeply, move deliberately. Let your life become a sermon, your silence a lesson, and your presence a standard. Because once you have faced every truth, there is nothing left to fear. That is the freedom every man is chasing, whether he admits it or not. Not money, not fame, not validation. Freedom from weakness, from confusion, from dependency, from the noise of a world addicted to avoidance. You can have that freedom, but only if you're willing to bleed for it. Only if you're willing to let go of everything soft and false. Only if you're willing to let truth finish what it started. If you can do that, if you can hold the line when every comfort calls you back, you'll wake one morning not who you were, but at who you were always meant to be: calm, clear, unstoppable. The world will still look the same, but you see it through the eyes of a man who no longer drifts, a man who commands, a man who is free. And when that freedom finally finds you, it won't come with fanfare. It won't arrive dressed in thunder or applause. It'll come quietly, late the dawn, after a long and brutal night. You'll wake one morning and realize you're not rushing to escape yourself anymore. The weight that followed you, those invisible anchors of guilt, regret, comparison, they're gone. Or rather, they've been burned down and repurposed into fuel. What once held you now drives you. And you'll stand there in the stillness of your own room, realizing that you've crossed something invisible. You no longer wake up reacting. You wake up directing. You're not in survival anymore, you're in sovereignty. That what these truths were always leading you toward. Dominion, not over others, but over yourself. Because once you rule yourself, the world becomes your servant. Freedom does not mean escape from responsibility. It means ownership of it. When you become truly free, you stop fearing duty because you understand it not a burden, it proof of your authority. You look at the work, the pressure, the weight that once exhausted you, and now it feels sacred. The discipline that used to feel like punishment becomes a kind of worship, because you know now that no man was meant to live easy. Ease breeds decay. Purpose breeds life. You find your rhythm in the repetition, waking early, thinking clear, executing without emotion. Not because you're robotic, because you're alive in a deeper sense. You've learned to find meaning in mastery, and in that mastery, you've uncovered something the weak will never know. Peace through pressure. This is the paradox that defines every great man. The same fire that destroys the unprepared becomes the forge that tempers the ready. Weak men run from heat, strong men build inside it. The difference is not circumstance, it's philosophy. Most men pray for lighter loads, the wise pray for stronger backs. Most complain about how unfair life is, the great ones study how life works and use its laws to their favor. Buffett doesn't rage against the markets, he learns their rhythm until they aim to dance for him. Carnegie didn't curse poverty, he studied it until it became the root of his power. These men didn't play the victim, they played the law. They understood that life rewards alignment, not emotion. That what you must remember when life pushes back, it not personal, it principle. The universe isn't against you, it indifferent. It doesn't punish or pity, it simply mirrors what you are. If you're disciplined, it multiplies your order. If you're lazy, it magnifies your chaos. That's the truth most men never face. They keep waiting for mercy and assist built on math. That's why they stay stuck, because they never stop to learn the equation. But you, if you're still listening, you're not built for that ignorance anymore. You've seen too much, you've felt too much, you know that excuses are lies whispered by the dying iron of you that fear evolution. Let them die. More nothing. The death of weakness is the birth of wisdom.
Those complain about how unfair. Wise is the great ones study how life works to use its laws to their favor. Buffett doesn't rage against the markets. He learns their rhythm until they aim to dance for him. Carnegie didn't curse poverty. He studied it until it became the root of his power. These men didn't play the victim. They played the law. They understood that life rewards alignment, not emotion. That what you must remember when life pushes back, it not personal, it principle. The universe isn't against you. It indifferent. It doesn't punish or pity. It simply mirrors what you are. If you're disciplined, it multiplies your order. If you're lazy, it magnifies your chaos. That the truth most men never face. They keep waiting for mercy in a sieve built on math. That's why they stay stuck, because they never stop to learn the equation. But you, if you're still listening, you're not built for that ignorance anymore. You've seen too much. You felt too much. You know that excuses are lies whispered by the dying of you that fear evolution. Let them die. More nothing. The death of weakness is the birth of wisdom.
The truth is, the climb never ends. Every time you reach a new summit, another rises in the distance. And that not punishment at purpose. Growth is infinite, because awareness is infinite. Each truth you conquer only reveals a deeper one waiting to be mastered. And that's how life keeps you sharp. You're not meant to arrive, you're meant to ascend. Arrival is for men who've run out of hunger. Ascension is for those who've learned to feast on challenge. You'll reach a point where you stop chasing finish lines and start chasing refinement. You'll start to realize that success isn't a goal, it's a rhythm. Every day you align a little closer to your highest self. Every day you prune, polish, perfect. Every day you become harder to shake, harder to tempt, harder to rake. And when people ask what changed, you won't have an answer they can understand, because they're still waiting for something external, a new method, a book, a system, a guru. They're still looking for key when you've already become the door. The truth you've internalized now radiates through you. You can't even fake weakness anymore. It doesn't fit. You carry yourself differently. You speak slower. You act cleaner. You think further ahead. You no longer waste breath explaining vision to those who can't yet see. Instead, you demonstrate through precision. You show through results. And that's what terrifies average men the most. The fact that your silence now says more than their noise they're good. But beware, this new level of strength will attract both reverence and resentment. You'll be admired for what you've built, but hated for what your presence exposes. Weak men feel smaller around clarity. The lost feel accused by focus. You don't need to fight them, prove them wrong, or convince them otherwise. Just keep walking. Let your consistency do what arguments never can. The men who are meant to rise will feel drawn to your gravity. They'll come not to compete, but to collaborate. That's how true brotherhood begins, through resonance, not recruitment. The strong recognize the strong because they share the same silence. And one day, much later, when you're sitting under the same quiet sky that once held all your doubts, you'll realize the greatest gift truth that gave you: simplicity. Life won't feel so complicated anymore. Not because it got easier, but because you stopped resisting it. You'll understand that every moment, every victory, every loss, every betrayal, every test was never working against you. It was working on you. It was carving, sculpting, preparing you to hold what you once prayed for. You'll look back at every closed door and realize they weren't rejections, they were redirections. You'll look at every storm and realize it was not destruction, it was purification. That the quiet miracle of truth, it redeems everything. It wastes nothing. The pain, the mistakes, the years you thought were lost, they were never wasted. They were tuition. You paid for wisdom in the only currency the universe accepts: experience. And if you've paid enough of it, you start to see life as it is. A perfect balance of mercy and discipline. You stop fighting it and you start dancing with it. The rhythm of cause and effect becomes your partner, and suddenly every movement has meaning. You move slower, but you move right. You no longer crave more, you crave mastery. Which you stand at the edge of yourself holding 10 truths like torches. You can drop them and go back to the dark. You can pretend you never heard them, or you can light your path with them and never look back. The choice is yours. But understand this: once a man sees truth, he can never unsee it. Once he tastes freedom, he can never digest captivity again. And once he meets the version of himself forged by fire, no comfort will else seduce him back to weakness. You were not built to stay average. You were built to become a law unto yourself, a man of rhythm, reason, and relentless resolve. That's what the top 1% truly are. Not lucky, not chosen, just awake. Awake enough to see what others ignore, brave enough to accept what others deny, patient enough to master what others rush through. And that, my friend, is the difference between a man who merely exists and a man who reigns. And when the world finally starts to notice, when people begin to call you lucky, gifted, or blessed, you'll almost laugh, not out of arrogance, but understanding. They see the shine, but not the sharpening. They see the fruit, but not the planting, the pruning. The nights you sat alone in silence while the rest of the world slept. They see the result, but not the repetition, the discipline, the relentless decision to keep build when no one was clapping. That's the tragedy of the modern man. He worships results and ignores rhythm. He wants what greatness produces, but not what it demands. But you by now know the truth. Success is never sudden. It's cumulative. Every decision, every sacrifice, every rejection you didn't let rake you was a deposit in a compound account that time could never touch. The interest doesn't show up daily, but when it does, it's exponential. That's the real compound Buffett spoke of. Not just of money, but of mindset. The compound of discipline, the compound of clarity, the compound of every hour spent in mastery instead of mediocrity. You'll realize that the fortune you're building has never been in your hands, it's been in your habits. That the secret the one can live by, wealth is a symptom, not the cause. Money follows mastery the way shadow follows light.
The weak chase money, the wise chase law, and law always rewards the obedient. You'll start to see for every man builds his own prison or palace, brick by brick, day by day. The bricks look the same from the out: routine, choice, conversation, thought. But what makes them different is intention. The man who builds unconsciously creates a cage. The man who builds consciously creates a kingdom. Both are working, both are moving, both are tired, but one wakes up to freedom. That's why when you look around, you'll notice that almost everyone is busy, but very few are alive. The crowd confuses movement for momentum. They sprint in circles and call it progress. They drown in information and call it intelligence. But the awakened man learns to slow down and move right. He builds systems instead of cycles, laws instead of loops. And that way, you'll feel the real separation begin. You'll start to notice that your conversations change. The language of small men complaint, blame, gossip, fear will start to sound foreign to you. You won't judge them for it, you'll just outgrow it. Because when you start to think in truth, small talk starts to taste like ash.
You'll crave conversations about creation, strategy, legacy. You'll find yourself drawn to people who don't talk but build. You'll start to recognize your tribe not by their opinions but by their discipline. They'll be the ones who rise early, move quietly, work relentlessly, and speak with precision. They won't waste time debating the weather when they can discuss how to build empires in the storm. But this separation isn't pride, it's preservation. When you stop feeding off low energy, you start generating your own. That when you become untouchable. The opinions that once wounded you now glance off the arrows against armor. You stop seeking validation from people who haven't built anything. You stop craving recognition from crowds who don't even recognize themselves. And in that quiet, you find something sacred, contentment. Not complacency, but contentment. The deep knowing that you're exactly what you're meant to be, doing exactly what you're meant to do. That when success stops being external and becomes internal. You start to measure your days differently. You no longer ask, how much did I do? But how much did I align? You stop chasing more and start refining what already is. You look at your habits the way a sculptor looks at stone. Not at punishment, but at art. You start shaping your life with care, removing the excess, cutting the noise, perfecting the form, and eventually the masterpiece begins to emerge. Not because you added something new, but because you removed everything that wasn't true. That's what mastery really is, not addition, but subtraction. The relentless stripping away of everything unessential until only truth remains. And you do, you'll notice the world responding in kind. Opportunities appear, not because they were absent before, but because your clarity finally allowed you to see them. Money flows, not because it suddenly started caring, but you stop leaking energy through chaos. Relationships evolve, not because people change, but you stop tolerating confusion. You'll realize that most of life's limitations were never external. They were self-imposed ceilings made of fear, noise, and hesitation. Once you break through them, the world doesn't expand. You do. Then, one night, you'll look out at the same city that once intimidated you, and it'll feel smaller, not because it shrank, but because you grew. You'll see the same skyline, but this time, you'll understand it differently. Every tower, every empire, every symbol of success is just proof of one vain thought made solid. Every fortune began then an idea held long enough, fed deep enough, believed hard enough to become form. And you'll realize that your own thoughts have the same power if only you'd hold them long enough without flinching. Because that's what separates the great from the forgotten endurance of thought. Carnegie once said that a man's greatest task is to concentrate all his forces upon one definite aim. Most men never do. They scatter their attention across hundreds of half-hearted attempts. But the great ones, those who rise, who last, they pick one mountain and build their entire life around climbing it. They say no 1,000 times to say yes once. And when they finally plant their flag, it not luck, it law, because the universe has no choice but to yield to the man who refuses to yield to distraction. So now the question turns to you. You've heard the truths, you've walked through the fire, you've shed the illusions. What will you do with what remains? Will you bury it under comfort? Will you sell it for applause? Or will you wield it? Because if you've reached this point, if your soul hasn't turned away, then you already know the no going back you've seen too much. The illusion has been broken. The only path left is forward, upward, through truth, through discipline, through law. And when you finally reach the summit, when the world is below you and the stars seem close enough to touch, remember this: the climb wasn't about the view. It was about who you became on the way up. The man who began this journey couldn't have stood here. He had to be forged. And he was at the reward, not the riches, not the respect, but the rebirth. You are no longer the man who wished, you are the man who willed. And that changes everything. And that man, the one who willed, who refused to retreat, who stayed in the fire until it shaped him, will never be the same again. You'll begin to see the entire game of life differently. What once looked like competition will now look like coordination. You'll understand that success isn't a race, it's an orchestra, and every man is playing his part. Some play loud, soft, then for a fleeting moment, others for generations. And the secret isn't to outplay them, it's to master your own instrument. You stop measuring your worth by noise and start judging it by harmony. You'll no longer chase comparison because you'll realize the only real enemy was confusion. Every time you envied another man's position, you abandoned your own post. But now you stand guard over your purpose, steady, anchored, immovable. And it's here that the paradox of success fully reveals itself. The higher you climb, the more you'll realize it was never about the mountain at hand. The money, the status, the empire, those were training weights for your spirit. The true reward is clarity. The true fortune is control over your mind. Once you master that, everything else becomes secondary tools, not trophies. You begin to live with a kind of unshakable detachment. Not apathy, but mastery. You can enjoy abundance without being owned by it. You can handle loss without collapsing. You can love without losing yourself. You start moving through the world with an ease that looks like magic, but is simply order. Because when your inner world is disciplined, your outer world falls in line. You'll notice that you no longer chase validation or comfort because your satisfaction is internal. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, your self-respect compounds. Every time you do the hard thing without announcement, your inner voice grows quieter. The war within fades, replaced by a steady hum, a frequency of focus. From that focus, creation flows. You start to think and build with precision. No wasted words, no scattered motion. You'll understand why Buffett can sit in silence for hours, studying, thinking, waiting. That not slowness, that's sovereignty. The weak panic in quiet, the strong sharpen in hit. But make no mistake, this level of mastery won't make you invincible. It will make you responsible. Because once you have clarity, there's no more excuse. Even if you make you think you more than audible, but make you responsible. Because once you have clarity, there's no more excuse. You can no longer play small, no longer hide behind confusion, no longer act like you don't know what to do. You'll know exactly what to do, and that the real test, the truth, removes your excuse, and that's why it terrifies so many. To live with full awareness is to live without escape. You can't lie to yourself anymore. You can't procrastinate your potential. You either execute or betray yourself. And betrayal of self is the only failure that truly hurts. But you'll also learn grace, the rare kind that comes from understanding how fragile strength really is. You'll stop judging the weak harshly, because you'll remember what it felt like to be blind. You'll remember how long you lived asleep. You'll look at men still trapped in noise and see not enemies but possibilities. You'll help them, not to feel superior, but because service is the natural overflow of abundance. When your cup is full, you don't hoard, you pour. You'll start mentoring others, not by preaching, but by example. Your life itself becomes the sermon. Every word you speak will carry weight because it forged from experience, not theory. You'll no longer need to convince anyone. You'll simply embody proof. And through that embodiment, you'll start to sense your legacy taking shape. It won't be loud. It won't need banners or titles. It'll live quietly in the men and women you've inspired, in the order you've brought to chaos, in the seeds you've planted that to grow long after you're gone. That immortality, not in body, but in influence. That what Buffett built, what Carnegie built, what every titan of law built. Not fame, but foundations. They understood that wealth without wisdom collapses, but wisdom with wealth multiplies. That's why their names still ache, not because they were perfect, but because they were deliberate. Deliberation is the dividing line between greatness and drift. Every man acts, but few act with intention. The weak move to escape discomfort, the strong move to expand destiny. The difference is invisible at first, but over time it becomes undeniable. 10 years from now, two men who started in the same place will live entirely different lives. Not because one was luckier, but because one lived by law. Every decision, every reaction, every investment was governed by principle, not emotion. And that's the hardest truth to accept, that your future isn't written in chance, it's written in choice. The man you be in 10 years is quietly being formed in the habits you practice today. So you start refining even more ruthlessly. You look at every hour, every conversation, every environment and ask, does this serve my law? If it doesn't, it goes. You'll cut entertainment that numbs, friendships that drain, habits that soften, and what left will be fewer things, but finer ones. Your life will shrink in quantity and explode in quality. Every moment will start to feel dense, deliberate, weighted with purpose. You'll find more satisfaction in a single hour of clarity than in a month of chaos. That when you've transitioned from existing to ruling, from living by reaction to living by rhythm. And when you lie awake at night, looking at the ceiling with the same eyes that once used to doubt, you'll feel something different. No panic, no rush, just gratitude. Gratitude not for what you have, but for what you've become. You'll realize that everything, the pain, the setbacks, the loneliness, was preparation. Every disappointment was discipline disguised. Every loss was redirection and training. You'll stop resenting the weight, because you'll finally understand it was the gym for your soul. And with that understanding comes the one thing every man craves, but few will find peace with himself. And that peace doesn't mean your journey ends. It means you finally learned how to walk it. You stop asking, when will it get easier? Because you understand now that you don't need easy, you need alignment. You don't need more time, you need more truth. You don't need another day, you need precision. And you'll smile to yourself, maybe even laugh softly, because you'll realize that everything you were looking for was never somewhere out there. It was always waiting for you to grow into it. The life you wanted was waiting on the man you were becoming.